What's going on, folks? It's your friendly neighborhood Professor Cack, swinging through the hallways, highways, and byways of a local YouTube room near you. We are back, and this should be the YouTube live for our English C1001 class. Okay, folks, so let's dive right on into the business. Got a couple of announcements for y'all, and then I'm going to dive right on into some key strategies on how to complete this upcoming writing assignment that you have. Um, we'll review the how to write a rhetorical analysis PowerPoint, and then that'll be our evening. Okay, folks. All right. It looks like we got at least one visitor in the chat room. How you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. How you feeling today? Drop me a note in the chat. Let me know how you doing. Couple of announcements that I want to actually make. Okay, let's dive right on into it. This is week 6. This is week 6, and we're almost at the halfway point. Next week, let's dive right on into it. Next week, we will have a spring break. So there will be no office hours. There will be no assignments that you'll have to necessarily turn in, with the exception of the midterm exam, which is due on Sunday. Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Okay, it is indeed open book, open notes. Make sure that you have contributed to the submission for the midterm questions and answers. I will be using some of those questions and answers that you've provided on that assignment submission in the midterm exam itself. The midterm exam will be a combination of true, false, fill in the blank, multiple choice, matching, and short answer. Okay, so it's going to be a diverse kind of array of different assessment methods that I'll use in that particular in that particular assessment. I've been saying midterm exam, at least for like the past couple of times on today's YouTube live. That's a little bit of a misnomer. I should actually be calling it by its proper name. By its proper name, our midterm information celebration. Okay, so that is indeed what I should be referring to it as. And part of the reason, the idea behind it is because, one, I hate tests. I was a notoriously poor test taker throughout most of my academic journey and livelihood growing up. And not that I assume that everybody else is, but I just understood. I think I understand now, as well as even back then, that there was a certain kind of anxiety that I had surrounding an exam or a test, whether it be standardized or not. If it was a pop quiz, it didn't matter, right? If you said the word test, actually, really, you didn't even have to say test. If you time me on anything, you give me a time limit, my anxiety starts to raise. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. When your anxiety raises, it's not inherently a bad thing. It just simply puts you on alert. However, it ended up affecting me in such a way that I wasn't able to complete the test. Right, I always ran out of time before I actually submitted my test, and so I just don't like. I don't like to use the word test. Okay, folks. So that's why I like to actually utilize the language of midterm information celebration to add on to the language shift. It's not just a cosmetic shift. There's some substantive difference between the traditional methods of assessment, right? The kind of summative type of assessment that's implied and executed through a midterm or even a final exam. See, for our class and also for my approach to teaching and learning, the major substantive difference lies in the fact that in a traditional exam, you don't get to come up with the questions. In my exam, y'all get to come up with the questions, okay? At least some of them. I'll be taking the really good questions from that I see from a lot of your submissions. Um, I'm always going to double check for the correct answer for the accuracy of the information that's presented, and you get to use excuse me, and you get to be included. Your voice, your choice, your selection gets to be included in the exam, quote unquote, itself. Okay, so that's the reason why I call it a midterm information celebration. It's almost like a block party, right, for information. Like in a regular old block party back in the day. I'm not sure if folks actually still did this coming on up, but one of the major things back in the day, at least when I was growing up, that was super duper fun, especially in the summertime, springtime too, a little bit, is that folks would have block parties. Folks would come on out. They would bring dishes, and everybody could contribute. Sometimes you may or may not have had a sponsor, right? But everybody got a chance to cook something on the block, and everybody came out and got to eat each other's food. So in that way, the block party was very celebratory. It was communal at the same time, just like our midterm information celebration will also be communal and also celebratory at the same time. Okay, folks. So if you have any more questions in regards to the midterm exam or the midterm information celebration, let me just kind of highlight for y'all. Not this one. Stop sharing that. And then we'll share this. I'm going to go back to the announcement. So, under submission form, midterm questions and answers, you all should see there's a little bit of a typo here. You all should see this first number two is asking for you to create a set of 10 questions and answers. It should be 10 questions and answers in response to the understanding written arguments readings from week 5. Okay, so let's go to week 5 just so that we can kind of double check and dive right on in and see about it. So from week 5, you should have. Um, hmm. Oh, no, you know what? Okay, my apologies, folks. So your questions and answers, that number 2 should actually be based on coming up with 10 questions and answers from the Erica Lindemann piece, right? The What is Rhetoric piece, okay? Um, Sometimes I'll actually assign another reading. In this case, I updated the reading for the Erica. I swapped out the old reading that I usually use for the Erica Lindemann piece, which is what is rhetoric. Okay, so you can certainly feel free to pull 10 questions and answer right here. And let's see if we can rotate this thing here. Oh, goodness gracious. That's not good. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so specifically the what is rhetoric, okay? So all these everything that comes from the what is after what is rhetoric. So on page 39 up here you can see that all of that's fair game, okay? All that's fair game. Classical rhetoric, right? This here is certainly a good place to kind of pull some questions from. And for those of you who may actually need some help, kind of constructing or composing the questions, the assignment chart, or excuse me, the critical thinking chart, not meant. You don't have to reconstruct that whole entire chart. There were some of your classmates, some of my students, not necessarily in my C1001 class, but that seemed to be under the impression that they had to make their response or their submission look just like the critical thinking skills chart that they had to recreate the chart. No, you don't. You don't have to do that. Okay. That's not what this is asking you for. This is asking you to create two sets of 10 questions and answers. Okay. So that's 20 questions total. Okay. Again, this number two should be based on the Erica Lindemann piece, What is Rhetoric? Number three is As It Stands. Okay. So it should be based on the PowerPoints, readings, video clips, films, things of that sort from weeks 1 through 5. Okay. Excluding the activities. And you're only writing the questions and the answers on a Microsoft Word document. That's it. This is going to be simple and straightforward. Okay, folks. All right. Hey, Miss V, how you doing? You said that your screen is blank. Is it still blank? Oh no. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Well, I hope that you start to feel better sometime soon. Make sure to drink lots of tea, lots of fluids. The weather is changing. I'm only mentioning that because I'm extremely sensitive to weather changes. Starting to get a little hot. Whenever the temperature shifts, my allergies go haywire. The only thing that can save my life are lots of fluids, fasting, not like I have very much of an appetite, and soup. Okay. So certainly stay hydrated. Make sure that you um, get some sort of type of electrolytes in your system so that way you can stay hydrated, especially in this heat. Okay. All right. So our next announcement, or rather our last announcement, is um, let's go to announcement really quickly so I can make sure that this is the last one. Let's double check really briefly. Okay. Okay, so y'all should have received an email from me earlier this week in regards to the updates and announcements for week number 6. Um, Office hours are indeed as usual, except for next week. Next week, we won't have any office hours because it is indeed spring break. So I won't post any updates. I won't post any new assignments. As I mentioned, your midterm information celebration is going to be the Sunday at the end of spring break. It's going to be March 22nd. That's when it will be due. And it is indeed open book, open notes. Do not use AI because you will not be able to use. I will know what answers are from AI because AI did not take my class, and I am looking for answers that come directly from my class and specifically from my readings. I am assessing the degree to which you all have taken notes on the readings, the texts, and things of that sort specifically from this class. This is actually my last announcement. I'm almost finished with the grading from essay number 1 for all of my classes. And the thing that I noticed about this particular class in English C1001 is that there are a healthy number of individuals who have utilized AI in their writing. That is unacceptable. Okay. You will see a note on your paper. You will see a low grade. Matter of fact, you will see a 0. If anything, you'll see a zero point 0.5. Just that way, you get a notification that your essay is actually graded. You will certainly see it reflected, even if you wrote over the page maximum, even if you wrote, at the page minimum. But if you utilized AI, I certainly have a way of telling. Okay. Um, and that is unacceptable. You cannot use AI in my class in order to submit a finalized product. Okay, you can't even use it to turn in a draft. You can't even use it for your draft. You can use it as a tool to help you to organize, possibly to even arrange. There's certain things that you can do with AI. I'm not against AI as a whole, but I am certainly not accepting any papers at all under any conditions or circumstances that utilize AI and that's submitted as a final draft. You will know who you are by looking at your papers. Okay. Um, there was way too many essays that I noted that were using AI, and also in your quiz that, well, excuse me, sorry, in some of in one of my other classes, I also noted, this is the whole reason why I was mentioning AI in the first place. I also noted that there was a quiz that I gave them, and folks were using AI for their answers to answer the questions that they received on the quiz. Let me explain something to you folks. That is completely unacceptable. And that will never fly in my class at all. Okay. Under any circumstances. My class material is way too specific, and AI is not smart enough to be able to keep up with the questions that I am asking from the material that you all are learning in this class. Okay. So do yourself, do me, more so yourselves a favor. I have absolutely no problem giving zeros and failing you. Okay. You can do a whole lot of nothing. That going to AI, typing in your questions, that's a whole lot of nothing because that does not mean that you're studying. Okay. You can do that. I'll fail. I will give you a fail. I have absolutely no problems doing that. Okay. Um, what I will not actually, excuse me, what I do have a problem with, um, while I don't have any problems giving fails for folks who use AI in any capacity for submitting or passing off work as their own here in this class. Um, what I um, do have a problem with is folks not coming to see me to work out whatever it is that they might actually be struggling with, specifically in terms of their preparation for submitting a final draft in this course, right? For a writing assignment. That's what I have a problem with. Each and every one of you all, this particular week, if you noticed in your course schedule, there's not very much that you have due this week. There's a reason why. I want to give you time to actually draft your work. This class is premised upon you all composing the best possible final drafts that you can. The only way to compose the best final draft that you can is by writing multiple drafts. Okay. You all have office hours that are extended and available to you. And those office hours, especially during the week that we have a writing assignment due, that's the time that you want to be sitting with me going over a draft that you actually created. Okay. Having me read one of your rough drafts that's as close to finish as humanly possible. Okay. I just actually had to have this conversation with another young person, one of our students in another class, about how I was able to actually tell, and I've been doing this for quite some time, folks. Um, I can tell when you did not write a draft. I can tell when you use AI. I can tell when you don't write a draft or when you don't write multiple drafts. I can tell when you wrote the essay the night before. It ain't that hard. You're not that slick. Not you individually. I mean, for the folks who might actually be laboring under such illusions, allow me to liberate you from such illusions. You are not that slick. Okay, you are doing absolutely nothing that I have not already done myself as an undergrad, or at least attempted or thought about doing at least. I'll tell you all a brief story and then we'll actually dive around and into how to write this, how to compose this rhetorical analysis essay. I'm in undergrad and I happen to see a professor that I just got finished talking about with some grad students. This is maybe perhaps before I had become an English major. This is maybe like the semester or the year before I became an English major. I did not always want to be an English major, folks. That was not on my bingo cards at all. Not in high school, not in college. After a certain point in college, it got brought to my radar, and really, as a result of um, me getting some advice from a mentor of mine. Okay, English was not my first, second, or third choice. Um, because I had a way with words, and because I could, to some degree or another, put ideas down on paper. I wouldn't call it writing, but because I could put my ideas down on paper, I struggled with organization. I struggled with coherence. I struggled with trying to, develop my thinking over the stretch of the paper, right? I struggled with all types of things in writing, all the things that y'all struggle with. Absolutely struggled with. Okay. I happened to develop a good relationship with some of my former teachers who were, at that point in time in my college journey, grad students who taught the equivalent of English C 1000 and English C 1001. Okay. It's just shorthand for the transfer level courses. Okay. Um, those grad students, I kind of told them, yeah, I'm thinking about becoming an English major. They said, oh, hey, if you become an English major, you have to take this professor's class. This professor is amazing. He's the smartest person in the entire world. You'll learn so much. He knows everything. He knows the classics. He knows antiquity. He knows this, that, da, 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 da. Right. And so I left out of the grad student's office and was like, all right, y'all, I'm gonna holler at y'all later. Peace. Right. I'm going back to the dorm. Right. It was dinner time. So I'm on my way out of the English building and I happen to go the long way. And around the long way, there's a staircase. And from the level above, coming down the stairs, there happened to be another person, looked like they were older than a grad student. And I just kind of, shot him a head nod, said, hey. Right. Long story short, that was the very same professor that they were just telling me about. So we struck up a conversation without me knowing exactly who he was. We struck up a conversation which ended at, "Hey, you should take my class when next semester. I'll be teaching at this time. Just sign up for it. Even if you're not an English major, I'll make sure that you get a seat." So I take his class. And in that class, we're on 10-week quarters, really 9-week quarters. So it's very fast paced. Every 3 weeks, we have an essay due. Okay. Um, because I want to try to impress him, I end up writing my essay in advance. Right. I wrote over the page maximum. It was a 3 to 5 page paper. I think I had like 5.5, right? 6 pages or something like that. So I go to his office hours and he says, "Oh, okay." So I say, "Hey, you know what? I want you to take a look at my essay. I want you to tell me what you think. Let me know if there are any changes that I can actually make. I kind of put some stink on it. I put a little oomph on it because I'm like, man, you know what I'm saying? Man, let me show this dude what I can do right quick, man. You know what I'm saying, man? I'm nice with the pen. I got me. My scribble game is cool. Um, so he said, "Oh, okay." He looks at the paper, start flipping through it. He says, "Oh, so you wrote over the page maximum, huh? Okay, okay, that's cool, cool." So then he starts looking at the paper and he reads it first time, and read it barehanded. Right? He's just kind of he read through it, right? Just turn the page, read through it, turn the page. And then he goes back to the beginning after he gets to the end, right? And this time now he takes out a pen. Right. And so now when he's reading through it, he asked me, he says, "Huh, where's your thesis?" And I say, "Well, heck, it's right here." He says, "Okay, all right." And he takes and he kind of crosses out a line, right? Turns the page. And he starts at the top of the page, draws a line straight down, turns the page, draws a line straight down, turns the page again. And I said, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute, man. What are you doing? He says, well, if that's your thesis, don't none of this stuff here actually follow. None of this has anything to do with that thesis statement over there. And so I said, man, goodness gracious, I'm used to people actually drawing a line, crossing a couple of lines out, maybe a word or two, even a couple of lines. But, usually people make instructors, teachers, right? They make corrections, right? They'll cross some things out, going from east to west, right? Horizontally, right? Left to right, the way that we read. He was making crossouts north to south, meaning that he was crossing out whole pages. Okay, folks, right? You starting to get the picture? Listen, by the time he got to the last page, he said, huh, I know that you said that's your thesis statement, but everything builds to this last paragraph right here. You know what? You should actually take this last paragraph here. He drew a line and stopped right at the last paragraph, right? He said you should take and make this paragraph when you rewrite this essay, but start rewriting it from this paragraph here. Make this paragraph your introduction, and your thesis is right here. You can keep that thesis. You could actually modify it, right? But you can tie that as your last sentence in this introduction right here, and then boom, now you'll have a coherent paragraph, a coherent introductory paragraph. I went in there with 5.5, 6 pages. I walked out of there with one paragraph. Okay. All right, folks. I'm not telling you this story here to make myself seem like, oh, well, back in my day, we had it way harder. No, it's not that. Okay. Um, I'm highlighting this anecdote and sharing this story here with you all, really to show you and to highlight two things. One, the value that exists in getting a draft done that you think is completely finished done early, okay, and then taking it to your professor, right? That's one. When you take it to your professor early, then you can get the feedback on it. Yes, they're going to make you rewrite. Go in with the intention of discovering and learning what it is and how it is that you might need to rewrite, right? As opposed to just keeping your thoughts up here, like, oh well, heck, I don't think I need to rewrite anything else anymore. I think this essay here is done. No, go take that to the professor and let them see it before you have to actually submit the final draft. The second reason why I want to highlight that story for you is because when you go to your professor and early and you have a draft, you can get all the feedback that you would otherwise receive if you were to turn that essay in when it's due. You could receive the feedback before you have to turn in the final draft. Right? In other words, for me in my case, right, in that particular case, that there was only one paragraph that was useful out of 5 whole pages, 6 pages, right? That would have resulted in me getting an F for that paper if I would have waited until the day that it was due to submit it. Get the feedback early, folks, so that way you don't have to. There's no reason for you to settle for a C or a D or an F when you can go get the feedback that would help you to get a grade higher than that. Okay, folks? So, moral of the story, go to your professor's office hours with a draft the week before your essay is due. All right, folks? Okay. Let me check the chat. Chat, talk to me. How y'all doing? Tap in with your professor. Okay, so we went over some announcements. Thank you. T has been the best. I really need to do this. I'm overthinking everything. Yes. Yeah. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Go ahead and write. Write it. Come to my office hours. Well, today, these are my last office hours. My last office hours for today. Okay, right? Yeah. So you definitely want to make sure, like, just write it. Just write it, get it out, get it done, and then boom, come see me. Come see me. Even if you come and see me after you've submitted it, schedule an office hours appointment so that way we can go over your essay. Okay. Schedule an office hours appointment with the intention of reviewing and getting feedback on your submission. Okay. Because you all have the opportunity to revise your essays as many times as you want, as long as you come and see me. That's the only condition that I actually offer on revisions, right? This here is what's explained in my syllabus. You have to come and see me first before you can actually submit a revision. Why? Because I'm going to give you feedback. I'm going to give you feedback. That is a whole sole purpose of us meeting, is for me to help you to learn what it is that you need to do a little bit differently. Okay. How to make a better essay. All right, folks. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's dive right on in. So Unit 2 starts with course module 4, Introduction to Rhetoric. It continues on through course module 5, Building Rhetorical Analysis, and then it concludes with the introduction, right, in course module 6. Okay, 6.0. I want to take a look. I want to work backwards. I want to take a look at the assignment prompt. Okay, let's go over this, and then we'll go. I'll tie in um, some of the elements from how to write a rhetorical analysis. I'll tie in some of the dialectical journal elements too as well. All along the way as we map out how to compose this writing assignment. Okay, so. Maybe better address. Yeah, no, I totally get you. I get you, Miss V. I get you. That's something. Let me tell you something. That's an illusion, right? The shame, the fear, right? The worry, the anxiety, all of those are illusions. And when I say it's an illusion, I mean it's something that solely exists up here. It does not exist outside of here. Okay, that's what I mean when I say that it's an illusion. Okay, it's real to the extent that your mind makes it real. Okay, you will have to let that fear, anxiety, guilt, whatever it might actually be, right? The shame, you're going to have to let that go enough to where you write. And guess what? It's not that you sound so nobody sounds dumb in a draft, okay? Nobody sounds dumb, period. You will never hear me say that, like, at all, okay? Not only because I started out where y'all started, I'm legitimately, I was at the same place where y'all are, right? But also too, because that doesn't help to build you up as writers, right? It's not something that I'm secretly thinking in my head. So, let's get that out the way. It's not something that, I'm calling y'all like underneath my breath. It's nothing like that. Again, all of that stuff exists up here. My job and my goal is to make y'all better writers, right? The only way that I can do that is if you come to me with something. The only way that you get better at writing is by writing. You can't think about getting better at writing and then become better. You can't think about basketball and then become a better writer. You cannot, likewise, right, be so overwhelmed with shame, fear, anxiety, and worry and become a better writer. Only way that you become a better writer is by writing. Okay. So let's go ahead on, right? Bring your fear. That's okay. You could tell me. You could tell me. I'm not, I'm proud. Promise you, I'm not, I'm gonna be 1000% respectful of you, your perception of yourself as a writer and everything. And I'm also going to encourage you to become better, right? I'm going to challenge you. All right. I'm certainly going to challenge you. I'm going to do that. Okay. But I'm not going to make fun of you. right? Bring your fears, bring your anxieties, bring your shame, bring your worry, bring all of that and your essay, okay, to my office hours. That way we can go ahead on and help y'all to actually catch some of the obstacles and like the kind of disconnects and the broken bridges that exist within your writing during the draft phase, so that way it doesn't pop up during the final draft. Okay, bring all that stuff with you. Okay, even if you're sick, bring it with you. Bring your sickness with you. Come on in the office hours with CAG. All right, folks, let's take a look at this writing assignment right here. Okay. Thank you so much just for showing for tapping in and responding, Ms. V. Right. Let's dive on into the writing assignment number two. Okay. So, writing assignment number two is indeed focused in on the misadventures of an awkward Black girl. Okay. So, many of you have gotten through that book. Okay, not everybody has, and I know it, just because it's an online class and it's very difficult for us to actually kind of, or even if I was like give quizzes, it's very difficult for me to kind of do like reading checks and things of that sort, right? So I already know some folks are going to be like, oh yeah, I didn't get to finish the book. That's going to be on you. Okay, you've got a couple of assignments, and you got to take what it is that you have gotten complete, and you have to actually make it work for this particular assignment. So in an essay that's 4 to 6 pages, a 46-page thesis-driven rhetorical analysis in which you examine how Issa Rae effectively persuades her audience of the message in the book entitled The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. What, pray tell, would you even say is the message of The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl? All right. Is it to help teach people, right, about who Issa Rae is, right? Is it perhaps maybe to teach people, right, about who she is and where she comes from? All right. Is it to challenge people's perception of Black folks and Blackness, right? Blackness is cool, Blackness is hip, Blackness is pop, right? Is it to challenge those perspectives, right? What is Issa Rae's message here in this particular text? That's something that only you, right, can actually argue for through the demonstration of her persuasive appeals in this essay. Okay. Um, just about any argument, right, would suffice. Just about, not every argument would successfully suffice. The difference lies in how well it is you're able to demonstrate your point, right? The difference lies in how well you're able to illustrate what you see as the message, and thus, right, uh, uh, how well you can demonstrate Issa Rae's effective use of language. All right. Okay. Direct your analysis to an audience of your classmates. And reason why I want you to direct your analysis to an audience of your classmates is to help to improve the clarity and also to the impact of your analysis. If you're writing this to, one of your other classmates or somebody who's like yourself, right, another young person, another college student, right, somebody who's returning, going back to college after some years, excuse me, if you're writing um, from that vantage point, right, then you know how deep you need to go, okay, in terms of your analysis. I want you to think about the rhetorical situation of this particular book, right? I want you to go and do some research. You will have to do some research um, from in regards to Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. You have to do some research on, what was the social, political, and even cultural climate like around the time that she released this book. This book is released, I believe, in 2011, 2013, somewhere between there. And at the time, Issa Rae is actually coming off the heels of a successful web series that's also too entitled The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, right? Or ABG for short. Okay. This is before her HBO hit series called Insecure, right? So, what motivated Issa to actually create either the web series and also to write the autobiography? What was that even about? In order to actually dive in to develop a deeper understanding, you will have to do some research. Take a look at some of her interviews, get direct line quotes from her in the interviews, watch the making of processes, right, where they reveal the behind the scenes footage and also to the behind the scenes insight in that reveal what Issa's motivations were, right? What she was responding to, what she was witnessing and experiencing in the land of Hollywood and popular culture on film, music, television, right? What was she responding to as she composed or wrote this particular critical memoir? Okay. All of that is going to be important for the section number two, right? The contextual description, all right, or the context um, of Issa Rae's Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. Okay. So just below in that third paragraph there, excuse me, the second paragraph here, well, actually, no, excuse me, just to round off the first paragraph, sorry. I want you to think about the rhetorical situation of the book, i.e., the contextual situation, right? And also to analyze each of the rhetorical appeals in your essay, right? So, how does you have to analyze, identify examples of, and analyze specifically her use of ethos, logos, and pathos. Okay, as I was going through your dialectical journals, I saw some of you, right? Many of you identify some examples of her use of ethos, logos, and pathos, right? I can't remember one person who actually focused their dialectical journal on doing what I had advised last week from our online session, which was to um, use the dialectical journal assignment as a way to identify and analyze quotes from the book that demonstrate her use of ethos, logos, and pathos. I don't think I saw one person who did that, right? That would have been the most efficient way to make dialectical journal number one and useful for writing assignment number two. Okay. In any case and in any event, right, you will use some of those specific quotes, right? Only the ones that pertain to her use of ethos, logos, and pathos. Only those. All the rest of them, they're not going to be that useful. Okay. But you're going to take those examples, those specific examples of her use of ethos, logos, and pathos, and you're going to provide specific examples from the text to support your read, right? Your thesis on how she's able to persuade her audience of her message. Direct your analysis to an audience of your classmates. This will help to improve the clarity and the impact of your analysis. Think about certainly, right, the rhetorical situation. Good rhetorical analyses show the audience for a given text, show how the audience for a given text has a significant influence on these rhetorical choices, right? So, again, going back to doing the research, pulling up some of those interviews, pulling quotes and commentary from those interviews where Issa Rae is discussing what her motivations were for creating the show, right? What her influences were in crafting, excuse me, sorry, not the show, but this particular book, right? The book and the show kind of go hand in hand. So you'll hear me kind of refer to the two interchangeably. Let's dive in to see what can this essay here look like, right? So here's a common outline for the rhetorical analysis. And what you'll notice here is that I'm limited by the confines of Canvas. I cannot do an alphanumeric outline here. It only allows me to do one or the other, only alpha or numeric outlines, which is causing me a lot of anxiety looking at this. So bad. Y'all don't even understand. As we will navigate our way through this. Okay. Okay. So this particular and most rhetorical analyses are comprised of 5 different sections. Okay. Each section is created by the title, subject heading. So the big phrases and descriptions that are provided here. Okay. That's what a section is. Each section or Any given section could have multiple paragraphs. Not all sections will have multiple paragraphs. Like, for example, the introduction. Let's walk you right on through it. The introduction is only going to be one paragraph. That's it. Nothing more, period. Do not write an essay that has multiple introductory paragraphs. There's absolutely no need. Okay. Um, First and foremost, you want to start out with the description, okay, of the current situation. Now, when we're thinking about the first sentence, this here is what I like to call the four-part introductory scheme. Okay, right? The four-part introductory scheme. Um, when you are composing your introduction, you want to describe each one of these four parts, and you will have a successful and complete, a comprehensive introduction. Okay. The first part or the first sentence should demonstrate what the current situation of the novel is, right? So, what's going on, what's happening right now with Issa Rae, um, and or the book itself, right? What's happening? Is this the 10th anniversary, right, of Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, right? Is is Issa Rae currently working on revising, right, this novel, right, this memoir, right? What's the current situation here with this particular piece, right? What's happening, right? In other words, you want to actually answer a question. What's going on in relationship to either the author or the text itself? Or you could even provide us with a short, brief, one sentence description on awkwardness, the topic itself, the main topic of the text itself, right? Awkwardness. What's that about? Right? Next, that current situation, in that current situation, it should be a current situation that's tied to a particular social problem, right? A problem that people are faced with. Awkwardness is certainly um, a problem that people are faced with, right? It's a social problem. It's a problem that extends beyond just the individual. Okay, right. Awkwardness, social anxiety, right? Given the current state of mental health, right? Um, some people might even say, right, the popularity of mental health, right, in our current day and age, our current society, right? It's mental health care and mental health um, uh, response teams have been more mobile now than ever before, right? I want you to help to paint that current situation for me. If you want to actually paint the situation right in a broad brushstroke using statistics, facts, key data, and information, that's brilliant. Teach me something about this current situation, right? About this topic. Teach me something about the current situation regarding this topic. Now, the thing is that the current situation should also, out of necessity, be tied to a social specific problem, right? Specifically, the problem that motivated the writer to write the text in the first place, right? And so, in that sense, you want to actually highlight for us, right? What is the social problem, right? What's the current problem? What is the social problem? Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm actually pulling something up for you all right now. There we go. Okay. All right. So this here is what we call the four-part introduction scheme. Okay. Let me actually shift. I'm gonna show y'all a little something. I'm gonna end the share, restart it with something else. I'm gonna share my whole screen with y'all. No, I'm gonna share a window. Let me share a window with you. Last notes. There we go. I hope that's it. There we go. Okay. Right. So can you see this? Can you see this screen, Miss V? Or chat? Chat, can y'all see this screen? It should say constructing a rhetorical analysis. Okay, cool. Good, 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 good. Right. Constructing a rhetorical analysis, four-part introduction scheme. Okay, cool. So what I want to highlight for y'all, right, is this is the four-part introduction scheme. Okay. This certainly you can use this. This applies to any text. Okay. Um, I'm going to use it. It certainly applies to Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. This example that I'm going to actually walk you all through, it um I'll have to draw out the parallels to The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, but its focus, as you can see, is almost exclusively on social inequality. Okay, so the current situation, right? What's going on in the text, right? This here is where you want to actually describe the who, what, when, where of the text itself, right? Or the who, what, when, where of the topic. Okay. Like I said, like I mentioned earlier, you could actually use this time, right? This first sentence here to paint a broad brushstroke of the current situation as it relates to the topic of social awkwardness, right, and mental health, right, or social awkwardness and college, right, or social awkwardness and meeting new friends, right. you know uh, Paint the picture, right? I'm just giving you the example of, right, the dealing with the topic itself, right, the topic of social awkwardness, right? You can use it to paint the current situation in a way that demonstrates the who, what, when, and where. Okay. Um, Next, you want to actually use the second sentence to demonstrate the problem. What is the central issue with that current situation, right? So what's the problem with social anxiety? Why is it even a thing? That is to say, what's the problem that Issa Rae found or maybe even had experienced with social awkwardness, right? With her own awkwardness. Okay. All right. State that problem in the form of a question. Here's an easy way to identify whenever a writer is raising a problem to the level of awareness for their readers. They'll state it in the form of a question, right? They'll express it in the form of a question. So, for example, for Issa Rae, right, she asks a bunch of questions, right? And to some degree or another, they are not necessarily meant to be answered, but rather they actually help to demonstrate a particular kind of point, right? And that point is exactly what we want to actually use in this sentence number two, where we state the problem. Okay. Right. The next sentence that follows, notice how there's a chain, right, of connectedness throughout each particular sentence in this four-part introductory scheme. Start off with the current situation, right? The current situation of the problem. Then you actually state the problem, right? Next, the third sentence, you should, in other words, if the first sentence explains the who, what, when, and where, right? The third sentence, excuse me, sorry, the second sentence states the actual problem. The third sentence explains why that problem is even significant in the first place. All right. So the third sentence helps to illustrate the significance of the problem um, in the first place, right? So it asks two questions. So what and who cares, right? That's what your third sentence should answer, right? It should be a response to, right? So what and who cares in relationship to your sentence number two, right? In relationship to the problem, okay? So what? Who cares about social awkwardness, right? That is to say, right, when I say who cares, I don't mean that in the colloquial way that we use the word, right? Who cares? I mean that literally, right? That is to say, who is the most affected by the issue of social anxiety or social awkwardness, right? Who, at least in this case, in the case of the text, who's the most affected by it? Issa Rae, right? This is perhaps the most important component, the most important um, uh, part of this four-part introductory scheme, because it allows us to introduce, right, the main character of the memoir that we're going to be analyzing, right? So, so what, right? That is to say, why is this problem here even important? And who cares who's most affected by this problem, right? That's how you answer or respond to the question of the significance of the problem, right? That's exactly what your sentence number three should be in response to. Okay. Your fourth sentence should be your direct line response to sentence number two, right? That is to say, how does Issa Rae respond to the problem in her text? How does she persuade her readers, more importantly, of her response to the problem? Right. And to dive in deeper and explain how your response needs to be formulated, right? Allow me to share with you. There we go. There we go. Okay. Allow me to share with you. Can y'all see this? Oops, let me go back. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Let me see. Can y'all see this? Let me know if y'all can you see? Okay. Okay, good. Good, 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 good. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Perfect. Okay, Jose, I see you have a question. My question is, so every question that you put on there, we should respond with one or two sentences. So it's so let me say it like this, okay, Jose? And you're talking about in relationship to the assignment prompt itself, right? That first section, the introduction. Um, you're not a robot, first and foremost, okay? Meaning if you only answer those questions on there and you don't think about this within the context that I just laid out for y'all, right? That is to say, right, thinking about this section of your assignment as an introduction, right? And using those questions as guide questions to help you to develop your responses. If you don't think about it in that way and you only just try to respond to each one of those questions, then you're not going to have a very engaging intro. Let me say that. Okay, does that make sense? Right? If you're thinking about this in a way that seeks to further understand, okay, I have something that I want to actually say about Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, right? But I need to organize my thoughts and I need to organize my introduction, how I want to start this essay off. That's the best way to approach and make use of those guiding questions that are in the introductory section, right? That speak to the four-part introductory scheme that I just went over to you, that I just went over with you all for this particular essay. Okay, those questions are meant to be more like guidelines, not hard and fast rules necessarily, right? Or really not meant to be responded to robotically. Does that help? Does that make sense? Are you with me, Jose? Okay. Right. So the only part that I would say there's a tight structure where you need to kind of demonstrate it this way, right? You need to reflect what it is that I'm about to show you. Is this thesis statement right here? Okay, because a thesis statements change, they grow, they evolve, and they differ depending upon the context in which they actually grow in. Okay, in this case, where the context that we're trying to grow that we're trying to construct and grow this thesis statement in is a rhetorical analysis context, which is going to be an altogether different format and structure than, say, if we were to write like a persuasive argument, a thesis statement for a persuasive argument. Okay. Um, in this case, for the thesis statement for a rhetorical analysis, you want to start first and foremost with the author's name. So here's what I want you to do: Jose, Ms. V, everybody who's watching this recording, right, at another time, I want you all to do this right now. Take out a piece of paper, take out a pen right now. Go. Okay. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down the author's name of the book that we're reading, Issa Rae, right? So, and then add an apostrophe S at the end of it. Okay. Right. So Issa Rae's. All right. Now I want you to actually select one of these adjectives here. It could be sophisticated, carefully crafted. It could be flashy. It could be inventive. Just pick one of these four adjectives here. Okay. Got it? All right, good. Now you don't have to stick with this, but we're going to move kind of fast. Okay. We don't need to study long here. All right. Now I want us to actually identify 3 rhetorical strategies that you recognize that she used from your dialectical journal assignment. Okay. So for the sake of our assignment here, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to our Aristotelian appeals chart. Okay. Right. I want y'all to actually walk with me through here. Okay, so I'm at the Aristotelian appeals chart. I'll up real quick, right? And here's the thing. I could say that, Issa Rae's sophisticated, and then you got to add the word right after the adjective. You got to add the phrase use of. Okay, so write that down. Use of. After the adjective, write use of, right? So it could say, after that, right, if I'm trying to pick the 3 rhetorical strategies, I could very easily say ethos, logos, and pathos. That would be AI level generic. Okay, right? Like, I am going to look for you in your, let me tell y'all something. Listen, hey, everybody who is watching this, let me tell y'all something. Let me tell y'all something. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do. Do not do this, folks. Okay, do not do this. I'm going to tell you what I am going to do. I am going to look specifically at the thesis statements alone, okay, out of everybody's essay who submits on Sunday. Okay, I'm going to look for anybody who uses the words ethos, logos, and pathos in their thesis statement for the part where they're supposed to insert or identify the author's rhetorical strategies. Okay. Do not use the words ethos, logos, and pathos. Why? Because they're so generic. That doesn't tell me anything about any type of ethos, any type of logos, any type of pathos that she uses. Look at how many types of all 3 we have here, right? I want you to go further, okay? Again, everybody, I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you, you are going to receive a very low grade if you only use the words ethos, logos, and pathos, okay? Why? Because, heck, I'm going to actually walk y'all through an activity. I'm going to tell you why, right? I'm going to certainly tell y'all why. Oh my gosh, right? But at the very least, it means that y'all wasn't actually paying attention to this lesson. So, for example, I'm going to actually say, let me choose which ones does she use. Okay, so she uses a lot of examples, real life examples. Okay, cool. So I'm going to say, right, like, ooh, even better, right, personal anecdotes, because that's a specific type of logos that Issa Rae is using. What specific type of ethos does she use here? She might use more than one, and that's okay. I only want to select the one that she uses the most, and I can talk more about the other ones, right? The other techniques from ethos or even logos that she might use within the paragraph, right? Within the body of the essay itself. But for my thesis, I want to actually pick the one that she uses the most, right? So, okay. Well, for the most part, she actually appears morally and ethically likable. She does some ethically questionable things, like catfishing. Don't get me wrong. Okay. I'm not saying that she's a moral standard, right? She's not a moral pillar or anything like that, right? An ethical pillar is it's not that. That's not what I'm trying to highlight here. But she does indeed appear to be morally and ethically likable, if for no other reason than because she's able to identify with an issue, a social issue that so many people actually struggle with, but didn't even have a name for it, right? Or couldn't really name until she came out with it, right? So I'm going to say, right, that she's using from the logos, right? She's using personal anecdotes, and then from ethos, she's morally and ethically likable, and then for pathos, this here is an easy one. She certainly uses figurative language, but she more than anything, right? She uses emotionally loaded language. She uses vivid descriptions. She uses emotional examples. Here you see anecdotes pops up again, right? Both in logos and in pathos, right? But here, the difference between a logos anecdote and a pathos anecdote is the emotion that comes behind it, okay? The powerful emotional suasion that she's able to generate among her audience. That's the difference here, okay? She uses all these things, right? Emotional tone, right? Humor, sarcasm. As a matter of fact, actually, I'm going to say, right, emotional tone, okay? So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Oh, hold on. Wait, I'm sorry. I got you. So you see, Jose, see you being funny. Now, if you want me to read your paper, you ain't gonna be funny. You ain't gonna use that if you want me to be if you want me to read your paper, man. You certainly want to use the specific types of logos, ethos, and pathos, right, in your thesis statement. Okay. So this here is what it's going to look like. Let's go back to That's right, man. And I want you to get an A. That's why I'm giving y'all the secrets right now. I'm giving y'all the secrets right now. I'm letting y'all know what I'm gonna do before I'm gonna do it. I want you to have an A. I for sure I want everybody to have an A in here. It's just that I know some people aren't gonna necessarily watch this. And they're not gonna follow the instructions. Those some who do watch it, right? They're not gonna follow the instructions, or rather the guidance that I'm actually providing. Um, okay, so we're right here, right? You're not going to be that. You're not going to be one of them folks, okay? You hear me? Look at the camera. Look at the camera. That's not going to be you, okay? All right, so first name, right? We got to use the author's name, right? First, and then we got to insert, right, an adjective, right? So Issa Rae, apostrophe S, right? Issa Rae's sophisticated, right, use of I need 3 rhetorical strategies, right? These 3 rhetorical strategies are also too going to be a signpost or a signal. They're going to signal to my reader, and it's also going to help me to remember, right? As a writer, it's going to signal to my reader that this is where I'm going in the body section of my essay, right? So when it gets down to it, right, this is ultimately what I'm going to be discussing and unpacking in the main parts of this essay, okay? So what are my 3 rhetorical strategies for Issa Rae? 1, boom, her use of personal anecdotes, right? So Issa Rae's sophisticated use of personal anecdotes, moral and ethical likability, and her use of emotionally loaded language, right? Does what? I got to pick one of these verbs right here, right? Does it demonstrate, create, emphasize, generate, fulfill? I'm just going to pick one, right? So demonstrates what, right? The function. The function is just another word for her message or her main point. So this is why I said we have to identify what Issa Rae's main point or her message is of this text. What's the main point? What's the message of this text? Right? Uh, right? Like what's the whole purpose behind her actually writing this particular text? Right? I thought I had my text around me. Where is that text? Because I actually have a response. She does actually highlight what her message is in the text, and it's actually pretty early. There's at least an argument that she makes in the introduction and also in the conclusion, right? So at the beginning and also at the end of the book itself, right? um for the sake of this argument here, or rather the sake of this exercise, let's just say let's invent it, right? So her main message is, right, to show, um her main message is to show that, social awkwardness, right, and anxiety, um doesn't have to be a social determinant, right? That, uh, period. Right? Social awkwardness and anxiety does not have to be a social determinant for an individual. Something I'm just making that up off the top of my head, right? Just for the sake of the example. So, right, when we pull it all together, this is one sentence. That's it. Your thesis statement should not be two sentences. It should not be three sentences. It shouldn't be a paragraph. No, it should be one sentence, okay? And it should include the author's name, right? So take a look here. We use this here as an example. Du Bois, author's name, right, with the apostrophe, right? So Du Bois is sophisticated, right? There's the adjective. So we got the author's name, we got the adjective, right? Notice how we need to insert that phrase. Use of, right? What? Rhetorical strategy number one, rhetorical strategy number two, rhetorical strategy number three, right? Rhetorically strong verb. Creates, right? Creates what? Boom, the message of his text, right? So, in other words, what this thesis statement here translates to is this author's use of these persuasive appeals helps them to persuade the readers of this message, right? That's what this thesis statement here translates to, okay? And that's what we want to create for our I just saw your response, Jose. He said I'm an old folk. That makes me feel like I'm in good company, because I am certainly now what my students would call old. One of the most endearing and also infuriating moments in my own teaching life was that happened before the pandemic. Goes to show you how long ago this was. Where one of my students said, um, "There you go, 46 years young. There we go. That's ain't nothing wrong with that, man. When you in good company, you in very good company. You in very good company." Right. One of my students said to me, right, I was going through some songs that I used to use in the classroom, right, and I think I was mentioning some artists, right, 50 Cent, Ti, Cassidy, Nelly, right, and then one of my students, right, very endearingly but yet still infuriatingly said to me, "Oh yeah, those are all the songs that my mom listens to on the oldies station." My professionalism has never been tested to such degree and depth, and then that moment right there, because how dare you say that that was the oldie station? I still listen to that today. Oh man. So listen, look, Jose, you in good company then. You are in good company. Let me tell you, you are in the right place. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All those people are who I still listen to this day. I watch Mace's podcast and Fat Joe. This is amazing. I saw Mario on an episode of R&B Money. These are all like not old people to me. These are all my contemporaries, you know. Oh man, folks. So that's how we compose a thesis statement for this rhetorical analysis. This needs to be tight. Okay, it does need to show up in this format. You could use, use whatever the language is that fits whatever your essay is. However, it needs to include the author's name, an adjective, rhetorical strategies, strong verb, and the function, i.e., the message of the author's text itself, what she is trying to convince us of, what she is trying to persuade us of. Okay. Now, what this does is this, especially with the rhetorical strategies right here, what this allows for us to do is this gives us a little bit of a trajectory. It gives us a heads up. It's what we call a signal word, right? It signals to our readers where we're going with this essay, which is why the format, right, needs to be so tight, right? There's very little variation that we could have here, okay, right? The variation is going to come in the rhetorical strategies that you all see Issa Rae using, right? And that you all are analyzing, or going to be analyzing in your essay, okay, right? So that's where the difference, right, and the kind of variation is going to come in at. Let's get back to the assignment prompt, right? Okay, so that's section number 1, the introduction and thesis statement. I just went over that entire section right now, 4-part introduction scheme, okay? Let's move on. Section number 2, the contextual description. There's an easy way to remember this, right? So your job here is to list and describe, right? That is to say, you're going to use these 5 components, these 5 elements here as your guide, right, for what you're going to write about in this section of the essay. This section, section number 2, unlike section number 1, section number 2 can have multiple paragraphs, okay? It doesn't have to have 5 paragraphs. That's not what I'm saying, right? This can have 2, 3 at most, right? I wouldn't say anything more than 3 paragraphs in section number 2, contextual description, right? Which is altogether unlike section number 1. Section number 1 should only have 1 paragraph, and it should be 4 sentences, right? 4-part introduction scheme. Section number 2, you could have multiple paragraphs, 2 to 3. And you need to actually address, that is to say, right, to describe, use these 5 elements here to guide what you're writing about. How can we remember the 5 elements that we need to write about? It's simple. CREAM. Remember that acronym, CREAM. No, I don't mean cream in a hip hop sense, right? Shout out to Wu-Tang, shout out to the RZA, shout out to Inspector Deck and Raekwon and Method Man, right? I absolutely love them. We'll be dealing with them shortly, okay? And their worldview, their philosophical worldview, otherwise known as cream. That's cream in a hip hop sense, okay? That's not how I want you, that's not what this cream here is referring to. This version of cream is referring to cream in a rhetorical context, right? Or cream in a rhetorical sense. Now, take a look. Context, rhetor, exigence, audience, message. Your job is to describe each one of these elements in this section here. That's why I said you could have 2 to 3 paragraphs, okay? All right. You'll have to do some research. You have to. There is absolutely no way that you can get around this. One, first and foremost, the first thing that you need to actually describe is the social, political, and cultural environment leading up to the composition of this particular text, of this, The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. That means that you got to do some research. That means that you got to go and you got to look at some of the interviews that Issa Rae and that her team did. That means that you have to go and you have to do some Google searching. You'll have to do some YouTube searching, right? Then I'm saying YouTube and Google, right? Because not because I'm trying to be fun and hip and cool and all of that stuff, but really because that is actually where you will find the most information on the context surrounding the composition of this particular text, right? Articles, right? Online articles will also be very, very valuable to you, right? Next, the rhetor. You're going to have to do some research in addition to what it is that you've already learned, or you could actually pull from the information that you've discovered from her autobiography itself, right? The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. You're going to have to tell me about this author. Who is the author of the text? how's their background and experience on the topic of awkwardness influence their message, right? We're going to have to point out some specific examples from the text that actually help to demonstrate that, right? That talk about, that show me, again, if you're writing this to an audience of your classmates, right, or to an audience of some of your peers in college, people who are not in CAG's class, people who have no idea, no clue who Issa Rae is, I want you to write like you're writing to those people, right? So you'll have to actually develop this part to such a degree that the people who you're writing to will be familiar with her, right? Again, these are guiding questions here. These here are questions that are help to guide your writing. Okay. Next, what made Issa? What problem was she responding to when she wrote this text? Right. What problem did she recognize? What problem did she see? Again, you want to check out the introduction because she does indeed talk about that there, and it should. This is a part, right? The exigence, right? Reflects whatever you include right here as your second sentence in the introduction. Okay. All right. Jose, I'm just now seeing your responses here. He said, I can't, you can't see anything. Wait, can you still not see anything oh, okay. All right. I wasn't sure if that was in reference to if you were responding to my Wu Tang reference, or if you literally could not see anything. I was thinking that it might have actually been into to my Wu Tang reference. You can see. Okay. Cool. Great. Um, excellent, good. Right. So, if you want to, you can also to just kind of follow along with me. I'll let you know when I'm gonna like switch my screens. You can follow along with me by looking at the assignment prompt. Pull up the assignment prompt itself as well on your end too, so that way you could just kind of follow along with me. But the exigence, right? So, what is the problem, right, or the issue that Issa Rae is responding to? Again, that's going to hook back around. That's gonna kind of extend what you introduce in that introductory paragraph as sentence two, right? It's going to extend that. Okay. All right. What's the social problem that she's responding to here? Okay. Right. Next, exigence, audience, right? Who's she writing to? Who is Issa writing to? Again, you're going to have to do the research, right? And again, by research here, what I mean is you're going to have to hit Google, you're going to have to hit YouTube, you're going to have to hit the magazines, right? The online blogs and things of that sort, right? Anytime where she's giving an interview, you're going to have to go and dive into the world of Issa Rae, okay, in order to develop an understanding about this particular one, right? So Jose, okay, a note on that, right? So that was a mistake. You guys should not be writing about V for Vendetta. That's another. I had posted up the wrong assignment for this class. Another version of my English C1000 class utilizes V for Vendetta. I actually show the entire movie, and then we like go into like ancient rhetorical kind of lessons and things like that. But for this particular assignment here, right, this assignment, writing assignment number two, should work with your dialectical journals, which you guys actually wrote on Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. Right, so those assignments they kind of follow each other. Was I'm writing a 6-page paper. You can hold on to it. You can hold on to it, and it could certainly come in handy at another point for another essay in this course here. More particularly our literary analysis essay. Okay, you can certainly hold on to it, and I'll open it up for you guys to actually write about it then. Heck, I might even actually show the movie then. So hold on to it, and the literary analysis is going to be slightly different from the rhetorical one. It's going to be slightly different. Okay. But talk to me actually offline so that way we can kind of get some better understanding about that. All right. Okay. I'm glad that this outline is helpful, though. I'm very, very glad that this outline is helpful. But yeah, no, that other assignment there is was certainly not meant for y'all to write this for this essay. This assignment here is actually meant to pivot off of the heels of the dialectical journal, which is solely written about Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. Okay. Um, yikes. Let me see here now, right? So who is her intended audience? Who's her intended audience? Who is she writing this to? Right. Um she's not only here's a key thing, right? Here's a key insight. She's not writing to only one audience, one group of individuals. Okay. All right. She's actually writing to multiple audiences, especially because this is her introduction to the world. This is her introduction into the public, right? So, who is she writing to primarily? Who's her primary audience, right? Who do you see based on the examples and the persuasive appeals that you've identified in your thesis statement? Who do you see her persuading? Who do you see her wanting to persuade the most, right? That's who you and then tell me a little bit about them. Again, remember, right? You're writing this to somebody who, like you, is in college, but they didn't take CAC's class, right? They didn't take my class. They don't know who Issa Rae is. So you need to tell me a little bit about the audience that she's actually writing to, right? What values and beliefs do that audience and group there kind of have, right? What are some of the core cultural values of that audience that you see being utilized or being tapped into by Issa Rae? Okay. Lastly, but not leastly, right, in this five-part cream, in a rhetorical sense, scheme, is the message. Now, this one right here, I'm actually okay. I'm okay if you can do it one of two ways. Okay. So you could give me just the direct message, right? This is what her, right, which will pivot off of your thesis, right? The last part of your thesis, right? That part that's about the function, right? You could restate that, right? In a new way. Okay. Or, or what you could do is cut it from here, right? From this section, fold it into section number 3, which is where you're going to actually give us a rhetorical pressy. I should say pressy. Sorry, folks. Heck, full of mistakes. Full of mistakes this evening in this unit. Right? This is the rhetorical pressy on Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. Okay? All right? The rhetorical pressy, remember pressy is the French word for summary. Right? Critical summary. Right? The same way that y'all had to actually compose a rhetorical pressy for Erica Lindemann's What is Rhetoric, and for Alan Johnson's The Social Construction of Difference, I believe you guys had to also compose, I think you guys actually had to do that for Alan Johnson's The Social Construction of Difference under week 4. Maybe it was actually just for the What is Rhetoric piece. Yeah. It was just for the What is Rhetoric piece. Okay. So that rhetorical pressy that y'all have had to write for the What is Rhetoric piece, you're going to use that same format, that same formula to compose section number 3, which should only be one paragraph. This should not be multiple paragraphs. You want to actually provide us with a brief summary of sorry, not your argument, but of Issa Rae's argument. And also too, you want to actually address the elements here. This is actually a kind of section 3 functions as a reminder, right? And a setup for the analysis that actually comes to follow in section 4, right? So it functions as a reminder of what her main message is, which is why I said what you can do is you could actually take and fold the message into section number 3, because that's essentially what the first question, I mean, what the first sentence in section number 3, the first sentence of section number 3 should be, what is her message and what is she arguing and how does she support it, right? What are the supporting details? I believe that's exactly what's what's a part of the first sentence of the rhetorical pressy, right? Sentence number 1, you got to name the author, right? So again, you're going to be reminding us, right? So Issa Rae, right, in her autobiography or in her critical memoir entitled "The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl," right? Put the date in the parentheses, right? You're going to have to use a rhetorically active verb, right? Demonstrates that, right? And then her message, right? So that's why I said you could fold that last part of the 5-part rhetorical situation into section number 3, right? Uh, again, that's just an alternative, right? So there are 2 ways that you could actually kind of deal with this part number 5 right here, right? You could just quite simply state it, right? But then you're going to have to repeat it in the next sentence that follows, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Or you could streamline it, and that's the alternative here, right? Is to streamline it, right? So just combine this last part right here, right? Message into the first sentence of your rhetorical pressy, because that's what it's asking for anyway. Okay, right? So that's one. That's for your first sentence. The second sentence should provide your readers with an explanation of how the author develops and supports their thesis. In other words, right, it should provide readers with an explanation of which rhetorical appeals they use specifically, right? So here is where I want you to actually list out all of the rhetorical appeals that Issa Rae is using that you are going to talk about in the next section that follows. Okay. Notice and remember, section number 3, this rhetorical pressy section right here, right? This critical summary section serves as a reminder and a setup for the analysis that follows, right? In other words, this is how you actually develop coherence on a global level, which is what we call organization throughout the entire text. It's how you arrange your ideas and how you maintain tight connectivity between the paragraphs, right? Sentence number 3 in section 3, the rhetorical pressy section, requires that you include a statement of the author's purpose, right? So what's the author's purpose, right? Issa Rae intends to do X in order to achieve Y, right? So what's the author's purpose? That's what sentence number 3 is. Sentence number 4, right, should be a description of the intended audience and the relationship that the author actually establishes with the audience, right? So here now you're not just kind of um, elaborating on the cultural values of the author itself, or excuse me, of the audience itself. Here, you're discussing and explaining what the relationship is between the author and audience, right? And that should serve as an effective setup for the section that follows, which is the appeals to the audience. Okay. Now, here in this section, this is where you're going to dive in. You're going to have this section is going to be comprised of 3 paragraphs. Okay. And in this 3 paragraphs here, you are going to want to actually highlight a couple of things. Let me show you all how this could be structured. One second here. Okay. All right, folks. So here I need to show y'all how to integrate quotes, how to set up and integrate your quotes. Okay. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. Okay. I'm pulling up some of my notes here. Give me 1 more second. Just trying to pull up my notes here on integrating quotes. See, this section here, when we break this down, section number 4, then the essay is going to seem like it's manageable. It's going to seem like, oh, okay, well, heck, it's not that bad. The main thing that a lot of my students are missing when it comes to um, developing their thinking or developing their ideas, a lot of what my students oftentimes are missing is the setup and the structure, right? There is a form and a flow to how these things here should go. And the main thing that my job is to show y'all what that form is and also to what the flow is, right? How it should actually move. Okay. How you move from one idea to the next. One more second. Heck, man, I got a lot of notes. There we go. Okay. Okay, folks. So here we go. All right. This section here is perhaps this is the most important section in your entire essay. Okay. And I'm kind of going overtime here, but this is going to be worth it. So this section is really where you want to show off your analysis. This is where you get to shine. Okay. This section right here, first of all, is going to be framed by the persuasive techniques that you identified in up here, right? In your thesis statement. Okay. So whatever the first rhetorical strategy is that you identified in your thesis, right? So for us, it was what? Her use of, let's go back to it. I think, what did I say? I said, right, personal anecdotes, appearing morally and ethically likable, and then, right, her emotional tone. Okay. So my first section of my body paragraph, I'm going to analyze I'm going to pick out of my dialectical journal, right? I'm going to go back to my dialectical journal. Okay. Because again, remember, as I mentioned last week, in last week's video, what the point of last week's assignment with the dialectical journal is to help you to get started writing this particular essay, right? Writing assignment number 2. So I'm going to go back to my dialectical journal and I'm going to actually pick out those quotes and my analysis that I already have composed and written. Right? I'm going to pick those out, highlight them if I need to, right? The ones that specifically demonstrate her use of personal anecdotes, right? From my dialectical journal. Okay. I'm going to go right back there, pick them out, set them off to the side, and then get them ready. All right. Now, this is how we create a topic sentence, right? So this is how we start that paragraph, all right? Okay, so I showed you all how to actually do the thesis, right, for the rhetorical analysis. You're going to use the same formula for the topic sentences, okay? So, like, let's say that I chose the word. So for Issa, we chose personal anecdotes, right? So here I'm going to say personal anecdotes, not diction, right? Just pretend that this says personal anecdotes, right? So here I'm going to actually use the author's name, right? I'm going to say, right, Miss Ray, right, or Issa Ray, right? Again, we want to, because we don't know her personally, we can't say Issa, right? Like that's the homegirl. That's not, that's, don't do that. Right? Miss Ray or Issa Ray, right? Then we got to use an adjective, right? Issa Rae's sophisticated, right, use of personal anecdotes, right? Remember, I'm crossing addiction out, right? I'm going to use this as an example for Issa Rae, right? So her sophisticated use of personal anecdotes generates what? Um, logical persuasion, right, among her audience. Boom. That topic sentence is done. I'm done. I have a topic sentence. That's done. That's done. Right? Now, you don't need to include the examples from the text in that sentence. You want to include the examples from the text in the paragraph. Okay? Every single example that you use, you need to analyze it. Whatever it is that you think might be too much, I want you to do that because it's not enough. Okay? All right? So take a look here. Watch this. You start off with that topic sentence, right? The next sentence that follows should be your first example from the text. Okay? Right? So I am going to, let me actually kind of, let me see. Critical thinking. Okay. I'm going to do it this way. Let me do it this way. Right. Okay. Boom. So, okay. We'll say topic sentence, right? Issa Rae's sophisticated use of personal anecdotes illustrates, or what did I say? Creates the foundation for her logical appeals. Right? Okay, boom. That's my first sentence, right? My next sentence, I want to actually include an example, right, in the form of a quote, right? What do you mean, Jose? What I'm showing you all right now? No, y'all got to actually write this down. This is it. These are part of my notes that I've actually kind of pulled together in preparation for this live. So y'all gotta actually you can go back and rewatch the video, but you have to actually like write this down or kind of like work your way through this as I'm also demonstrating it to y'all right now. Okay, thank you. This is a cheat sheet. Good job. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. If you're doing that, yes, yeah, write your cheat sheets, because let me tell you, Write your cheat sheet and then put it in your notes. And when you put it in your notes, then go back and study it and try to memorize it. And then when you memorize it, then go do it. And then when you do it, go back and do it again, and do it for every other essay that you have for all throughout the entire your entire academic career. Always use it, right? Until you find something better. Okay, right? And part of the reason why I'm laughing, but I'm also being very serious. I want you to actually start to apply these concepts here, because you will see them pop up on the midterm and also to the final exam. Right. So it's a good thing that you're writing the cheat sheet. That's good. Right. Okay. So boom, topic sentence. That's one. Right. Next sentence. That's your first sentence. Right. Next sentence should be the direct line quote. Here's how you do it. Here's how you do it. Here's how you do it. Folks, I don't know if anybody's actually showed you how to integrate quotes, but here, this is exactly what your friendly neighborhood Professor Cag is here for, right? So first and foremost, boom, you got to have the setup. Got to have the setup. I'm going to copy this. Uh-oh, messed up my formatting. Go back. There we go. Okay, cool, boom. Right, so the setup. First, here's like part one, right? The setup. Tell your readers who the quote comes from. I cannot tell you. I've seen this more times than I care to count on just your critical memoirs alone, your own personal stories. There's no setup for the quote that that you all begin that signals your dialogue, right? The use of dialogue. Okay, right? Y'all can't, you cannot move further. You do not, Gandalf, okay, right? Lord of the Rings, you shall not pass any further beyond this point without doing this, without addressing and correcting that, okay? All quotes need to have a setup. That is to say, tell the readers who the quote comes from through the use of signal words, right? So who's the author? It's something simple. This works every single time. Trust me, right? It works every single time. Tell me who the author is, right? And then you could say, right, acknowledges, you could say agrees, right? You could say asserts, right? Believes, claims. Heck, there's some words that are not even on here. Explains, illustrates, right? Creates, or reflects, right? What are they doing? You have to look at the quote itself. You got to look at that quote, right? And then tell me, what are they doing in that quote? Just in one verb. Whatever that verb is, that's what needs to be right here, right? That's exactly what needs to be right here. So Issa Rae, right, explains, comma, that, right? Or excuse me, explains that, comma, and then boom, you start the quote. Right, so it'll be like this. All right. Okay. All right. Insert the quote, right? And then I want to have my citation. In text citation. In text citation right here. All right, boom. Put a period at the end of it. That's the end. There's no punctuation that goes after this. It goes after the in-text citation right here, okay? All right, folks. This is how you introduce a quote, right? This is what you call a setup. Tim Wise acknowledges that, right? Issa Rae demonstrates, right? Or Issa Rae explains that, comma, insert the quote, in-text citation, right? In this case, right, it would actually be author's last name, comma, page number, right? Period, right at the end of it. Once you insert that quote, that's your first example, right? So that's example one, right? You with me? Okay, right? It's example number one, okay? After every single time that you use an example, remember, I stressed and overly emphasized to you all, your analysis needs to be double the length of the quote. Why? Because I knew what you were going to do with it. I knew what I wanted you to do with it. I wanted you to actually use those quotes for this particular assignment. So, boom, you insert the quote right here. Bam. Now you take what you analyze, right? So, what's over there in that analysis column for that quote on your dialectical journal, and then you add it right here. So, you have to do something with that quote, right? So, this here is step number 2. You have to interpret. Okay. You have to analyze. Okay. All right. And you have to synthesize the meaning of the quote, right? So what do we mean? Well, what does it mean to interpret? Well, first and foremost, right? It means to make inferences based on evidence in the text, right? This is a kind of analysis, right? Um, but analysis is also something that's very distinct and unique. Okay. All right. So you want to interpret it. So, what is the author saying, right? What's your direct line translation? What does this quote here say, right? What does this quote here mean? What does it say? Right. So, pull out the meaning, right? Boom. Next, right, when you analyze it, then you want to break it down into its component parts and highlight what each part means or explain its significance. Right? But the main thing here, right, is that when you analyze, analysis is a very specific type of critical thinking skill, and it refers to breaking the quote down, meaning that you're going to pull specific parts of that quote apart. Okay? You have to pull it apart and then highlight it because these are the most important parts of the quote that you want us to focus and highlight on, right? And then after you break it all down, right, after you pick it apart, then, right, for synthesis, when you're synthesizing, you want to reconnect the analyzed meanings to your thesis statement. And guess what, folks? Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this, folks. Look, look. Topic sentence. This is all controlled under one topic sentence. You see how I did that? Look, folks. And that's only one example. You all have, ostensibly, 15. 5 from ethos, 5 from logos, 5 from pathos. You could do all 5. You don't want to do all 5. That's going to make your essay way longer. The essay should be within the page bounds. Writing more doesn't mean that I'm going to look at it with more favorability. It doesn't mean that I'm going to say, oh, snap, yo, hey, they wrote over the page maximum. That's so good. I'm going to stop reading right where the page maximum is. And if you have not finished your essay by that point, or if you haven't gotten to your point by then, and I don't understand what it is that you're analyzing here, your grade is going to be reflected in your grade. Okay. And it's not for me to be mean, but this isn't high school, and this is not elementary or junior high. Okay. When somebody gives you a page limit, a parameter, you stick within that parameter. Okay. When you transfer off to your dream school, right, or when you apply for that job that requires a cover letter, and they tell you 2 pages, they mean 2 pages, not 3, not 4, not 10. No, 2. That's it. If you write over that or you don't follow within those structures or guidelines, they move you to the do not return call pile, right? That's so we want to make sure that we're on point there. Okay. But look at this, right? You got a topic sentence. You have your first example, right? Which is sentence number two. After that, the next sentence that follows is your interpretation sentence. The next sentence that follows after that is your analysis sentence. Right? The next sentence that follows after that is your synthesis sentence. Right? Look at this, folks. That's just for one example. You have 4 sentences for one example. If you use 3 examples, then you'll have much more than just 4 sentences. If you use 2 examples, then you help to make a stronger case. Think about it like this. How many examples do you need in order for one of your classmates or one of your peers who did not take CAG's class and who's never heard of Issa Rae? How many examples do you need to actually provide in order for them to see what it is that you see? Right? Okay, folks? Right? Guess what? Guess what? The same thing that I did right here. Okay? Same thing that I did right here for logical appeals, right? I want to do the same thing for the next 2 that follow, right? Needless to say, this is going to be the largest section in your paper. And if you follow that format and framework, you will not have a problem. And also utilize the tools, or excuse me, utilize what you've already written in your dialectical journals. You will not have a difficult time writing this essay. And you could use it anytime that you have to do a rhetorical analysis for any class. Right? Jose is doing the right thing by writing down a cheat sheet. Right? Okay. But this is the thing that I want for you all to actually do. This is how I want you to develop your analysis. This is what I am going to listen. Look, folks, I'm telling y'all, this is what I'm going to be looking for right here. Okay. This is what I'm grading y'all based on. How well do you do what it is that I'm teaching y'all how to do? Okay. You remember, y'all aren't robots, so I'm not expecting for y'all to respond robotically and do it exactly as Professor Cag said that he has to have it done. I'm not. This ain't none of that, right? Okay. I'm giving y'all guidelines, and I'm seeing how well it is that you all actually kind of work within the guidelines. Okay. All right. I see you, Jose. All right. Do this for ethos, logos, and pathos, for your examples of ethos, logos, and pathos, right? And you will have absolutely no problem composing this essay. Now, for the conclusion, check this out, folks. Here's what I would do. I would write my conclusion first. Why? Because that's the end of my essay, and that's really how I feel about this essay. Not only how I feel about it, but what it is that I see that can be changed as a result of having read this book, right? What's transformative about this text, right? What could be done differently? How might, right? If we walk away with Issa Rae's message, right? If Issa Rae's message were to reach the world, right, and it were to be persuasive, how would the world look differently? How might that change what it is that we do, right? That would make for an effective and interesting conclusion, right? Nevertheless, the conclusion should, at the very least, do a certain kind of job, just like the rest of these parts of this essay, just like the other sections in this essay. Every single section in the essay has a job. The conclusion's job is to urge awareness, to raise a new level of awareness about the message of this text. Don't you sit up here, listen to me. Listen to me. I'm looking for essays that do this thing right here. If you tell me, oh yeah, well overall I liked Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna cross a line right through it and say this here is not an effective conclusion. I don't. The conclusion is not asking for your opinion. The conclusion is not asking for you to give me your whether or not you liked it, right? How it made you feel, right? It's not looking for that. Right? The conclusion is specifically looking for you to imagine the persuasiveness of this text beyond just yourself, the persuasiveness of this text as a call to action, right? I need you to describe that for me. That's it, folks. I'm done talking. Questions, comments, concerns, emotionally justifiable outbursts, all of the above are acceptable. Let me have it in the chat, folks. Let me have it in the chat. I'm done sharing. Talk to me. Talk to me. I'll talk back. Any questions, comments, concerns? Again, emotionally justifiable outbursts are indeed welcomed. Nada mucho? Okay. All right. Cool. Heck yeah. Thanks, Jose. I'll see you, man. Okay. Hopefully this helped. For those of you who are watching the re-recording of this particular YouTube live, your essays are due this Sunday. Go back, watch, rewatch, watch again this particular YouTube because it does indeed reveal what it is that I'm looking for. I'm telling y'all exactly what it is that I'm looking for. I will also post up. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm going to post up under week 6.1. I'm going to post up my essay grading rubric, which is a description of what the A paper, the B paper, excuse me, the C paper, so on and so forth, do, right? The rhetorical moves that they make. And I'm also going to post up my grading criteria. So that way you all can have a more full, a more rounded um, expectation around my grading and also to what it is that I am looking at. This is not what I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking at while I'm reading your essays. Okay. These are the moves, the rhetorical moves that I'm looking for, or rather that I'm observing in your essay, right? This is what I'm commenting on. Okay. The difference between like me looking for it and like looking at it is that you have some of these elements in your essay, and I'm going to comment on how well it is that you develop these elements, right? If I'm looking for it, that means that I'm not going to actually comment on it, right? I'm just looking, oh, heck, do you have it? Check. Do you have it? Check. You don't have it? Oh, slash. Oh, nope, you don't have it, slash, right? That's if I'm looking for it, right? I'm looking at these things and how they work within your essay. The descriptions that I'm going to also to place under 6.1, right, in the modules is going to elaborate on, you know, what I look at and how it functions across a variety of different grade levels and papers. Okay. All right, folks. Man, thank y'all so much. Shoot, man, I done sat up here and kept y'all for a couple of hours, man. Thank y'all so much for tuning on in to your friendly neighborhood Professor Cag, man. I'd like to see that y'all rolling with me, man. You know, that's cool. That's all right. Jose, thank you so much, man, dude, for providing just the engagement and for the comic and also to the identification. Make sure to talk to me. Shoot me an email. Shoot me an email. Shoot me an email and we'll talk about that paper. We'll talk about what you've already started on. Okay, and I got you from there. Okay, all right, man. Y'all take care, Miss V. I'm gonna see you a little bit later on. Have a good one. Hopefully you feel better. Okay, tea, water. Depending upon how bad things are, maybe some Gatorade. But if you can avoid the Gatorade, you know what I'm saying, and just get you some electrolytes, a little bit of Pedialyte, you'll be okay. That's better. All right, folks. Hey, y'all take it easy. It's so lovely chatting and seeing y'all. Jose says tequila shot. Man, hey, if you want a hot toddy, go ahead. All right, folks. Hey, I'll see y'all next week. Same bat. Well, sorry, not next week. Remember, next week we have spring break. I'll see y'all the week after next. Same bat time, same bat channel. This is your friendly neighborhood Professor Cag signing off. Take care of yourselves and each other.